It's time to sit down and relax for the good, the bad, and the sequel Q&A with your host, Doug.
Hey there, Doug here. Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. This week's interview, it's a good one. I love the behind the scenes on the sequels that we're going to be covering. And actor Matthew Marsden, man, he really kicked it up a notch. Great behind the scenes stories while filming Rambo, talking about working with Stallone, Black Hawk Down, working with Caine. So many great stories. And of course, growing up in England, having that Hollywood dream. He talks about all of it. Oh, and I sold him short. He's a singer too. Had an album, Columbia Records, 2 singles that were in like the top 20, 30 in England. Oh yeah, and Destiny's Child did backup on one of his songs. Pretty wild. So we talk about Beyonce too. Well, I'm going to shut up because this interview is action-packed. And now it's time for my chat with actor and singer Matthew Marsden. Great. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. Thanks so much for taking the time. I know when Jamie reached out to you a few months ago, I know you guys definitely get busy. And then I'm happy that he was able to get back in touch with you because I loved you in Rambo, but we'll get to that. So what I like to do with these is really just find out how people got started. And I think your career is pretty interesting with some of the people that you worked with. So like any good movie or any good TV show, everything has a great story in the beginning. So where's your story begin? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in the Midlands in a place called West Bromwich, which is kind of an industrial town.
Oh, okay.
And I always loved film. I always loved American film, particularly. And I kind of had a dream of doing and being in Hollywood films. But it's normally it's just not seen as a possibility. Because I think over in the UK, apart from a few notable people like Michael Caine or Gary Oldman, it's very much a class-based thing.
That's true.
And I was very much working class, so I was like, oh, you know what? I'm probably never gonna get through. But I had a dream of doing it, and I just got my head down, and I think it was part and parcel of that is watching American films and having that kind of can-do attitude. That if I put the work in, then I'll get there eventually, and that's what I did. Yeah.
Is there one particular movie that you remember growing up, and like at what age was this?
Oh, well, I always kind of daydreamed, I think. I mean, I remember when I saw Star Wars, the first Star Wars was one for me that was well, like for many people, it really made an impression. And then I think that Rocky actually was a massive influence because it made me feel like, if you work hard enough, it doesn't matter where you come from, that you can eventually make it. And then it was proved 20 odd years, or however many years later, that I end up being in a movie with Stallone. And I think that could probably only happen in the United States of America. So that was really the inspiration. And I went off and I did all the usual things. I did what they call in England. I did my GCSE in drama. Then I did an A-level in theatre studies. Then I went off to do a degree in performing arts. And then I actually came out before I finished the degree because I was getting work. So I was very fortunate.
When did you start pursuing it full time? Was it like The Young Americans? That's the first role that's on IMDb.
Well, The Young Americans that was an interesting thing because I was at National Youth Theatre at that point, and National Youth Theatre is kind of like the premier youth theatre in America, in England. So I was very fortunate to audition for that and get into the National Youth Theatre. And from there, they kind of tapped up a few of the young actors and said, hey, do you want to just come along and basically be background? And it was Vigo and a few other big people. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'll come along and do that. So that was really like my first experience of film. But I've been doing, you can't really say that is a proper acting role. It's just basically being on set. You know what I mean? So it was my first experience of being on a set, and it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. And that was where it was kind of nice going and saying, well, I always wanted to do this, and I've being on set now, and I really enjoy it. So let's hope that I can make a career out of it, and I always thought that I never really wanted to pursue theatre, even though we all, most British actors have a background in theatre, which I did as well, but it wasn't really where I wanted to go. I always wanted to do movies. That was always my goal.
So in between the Un-Americans, I'm sure it shot the year before it came out, but since like around 93, and then how did you get the role in Emmerdale?
Emmerdale was, I was basically known over there because to pay my way through college, because I didn't have anyone that could fund me, I modeled, and I got a reputation of getting all the commercials. So I just turn up to commercials and get them because I had an acting background, and I really hated the modeling because it's a really weird thing, when you don't see yourself in the way that other people see you.
Yeah.
I was just like, I want to be seen, I want to act. And so I got an agent from there, and that's what happened. My agent said, "Hey, listen, there's this role coming up on Emmerdale. Do you want to go up for it?" And it was my first proper audition. It was my first real acting audition, and I got it. Yeah, and I got it. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm 1 for 1." And then after I came out of that show, I went up for what was the biggest show on British television's Coronation Street, and I got it. So that was it. I was 2 for 2 pretty much.
That's amazing. Especially right out of the gate to get 2 series, like you said, Coronation Street, huge show, and you're on that for a while. You're in a lot of episodes of that.
Yeah, I did it for a year. I loved it. It was one of the happiest times for me as far as an actor, because it's real like learning your craft over there, and also those shows make you massively famous. So it was in the UK. So it was a real moment, where you start experiencing that kind of fame, like not being able to walk down the street, which you pretty soon realize that it's a very surreal experience. And I have a lot of sympathy for people that can't deal with it. It's very strange. You don't really expect it. One day you walk up the street and you get your sandwich and you're a regular guy. And then it was my birthday, I believe, 3rd of March, 1997, that my first episode was on. And the day after that, I couldn't walk down the street anymore. So it was a very strange thing. But, and then winning the award there for Best Newcomer, or Most Popular Newcomer, it's what you kind of dream of getting. Yeah. So I was very lucky. I was very fortunate. I worked hard, but there's always a massive element of luck and being in the right place at the right time with those things. But I only ever wanted to do it for a limited period of time because I just wanted to challenge myself in other ways, and do other roles. You know what I mean?
Oh no, definitely. I know you say. I know a lot of people I talk to. They say like that. You obviously there's luck involved, but when you have that moment, you have to nail the audition. So no, that's great. You're able to do that. And then what the other show you were on too? It's called The Island. That was hosted by Bear Grylls.
Oh no, that's a different thing. The Island. Yeah, no. That's a different show. The Island was again. I came out of. I can't remember whether it was. I think it was. Yeah, it was after Emmerdale. And I went in for this audition to play a surfer on a TV show, and I got it. So so actually it must have been. I'm not sure whether that was before or after. Yeah, no, actually, so that's right. So the first audition I got was Emmerdale. Second one was I think I got Island. That was an offer. I didn't have to audition for it, and the third one was Coronation Street. Yeah, so I did 2 auditions, but Island came to me. It was a children's TV show. And it was really great, actually. It was a really great bunch of people, and it was in Jersey, which is a little island, not Jersey like here.
That's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, you are? Yeah. No, it's not. It was the original Jersey.
The original.
The original, the OG Jersey, which was it's kind of a place that's north or just off the coast of France and in between France and England, and it was really great. So yeah,
that's 3 years in a row. Right in the beginning of your career, 95, 96, 97, You're a busy guy. So all during this time, you were singing and.
Well, the singing thing was always it's a survival thing, because for me, when I started off, nothing's ever guaranteed. It's certainly never guaranteed in the UK. So I just thought I'd better be able to do as many things as I possibly can to maximize my chance of actually working. So then I'm like, normally the problem in the UK is, you go through, you do your training, then you go to theatre, and you get the third spear carrier on the right, in Coriolanus or something, if you're lucky, and then you work your way up, and then you might get a musical. So I thought, well, I'm not really a dancer, so I better learn how to sing. And so when I was going through my performance arts degree, I did a lot of singing. I had a band, and my band that I was working with, there was a couple of guys that just weren't committed, and I was just always completely driven to actually get something done. I didn't want to mess around. So I sang, and actually before I did either of those shows, I'd actually been offered a recording contract before then, but I didn't think that I was ready for it. I didn't think I was mature enough to do it. And even looking back now, I probably put a little bit too much trust in people. Even when I took on my when I signed my contract with Columbia Records.
Yeah.
But you never know. You never know. You hope that you're guided well, and I had a great opportunity to do an album at Columbia Records, which was a dream. I'd had a couple of offers from different record companies, but Columbia, because of its relationship with the United States, and also there's a lot of actors that sing or singers that act that were on the label, so I thought that was the best move for me.
And are you still in England at this time, or did you make the trek over to the United States yet?
I was in England, but oddly enough, the video for The Heart, Slow and Desire, my first single, was actually shot in New York. So I did come over and meet the big head honchos at Sony, and that was kind of a surreal experience, meeting those really, legends in the music industry. So, I did come over and meet them, but I hadn't made the move to the United States yet.
Was that She's Gone with Destiny's Child?
Yeah.
She's Gone. That's crazy.
She's Gone, yeah. Yeah, no, we did that. That was an interesting thing, because I was, recording the album, and we were in Sony in London, and I'm playing this track that I'd already recorded the vocals on, and then in burst this guy, and he's like, "Who's this?" And I was like, "It's me." And he's like, "Oh, you gotta work with my girls. You've got to work with my girls." And I was like, "Okay." And it was Matthew Knowles. So we literally went down to the studio that afternoon, and I met with them, and we recorded it. We re-recorded it. So it was quite something. And I already knew that. I mean, I loved their first song, "No, No, No," which was the big hit with Wyclef over there, and I loved it. And we went in and I sang with Beyonce, and she was just, I knew right there. I came out and I went, that girl is going to be the biggest star in the world. She's incredible.
Wow.
And she was just on a different level talent-wise, just singing. And she was maybe 17, I think, then. Very sweet. All the girls were sweet, actually. They were all really, really lovely. Yeah. So I was very lucky to have been a part of that as well.
No, that's a pretty cool experience. So then going back to your acting wise, next there's that on there, but Shiner. So that's where you're talking about people that you looked up to, and you're able to work with Michael Caine.
Yeah, that was amazing. So I saw that there was this movie being made called Shiner, and that they wanted a young boxer in it. And I've always, dabbled in either martial arts or boxing. And so what I did was I actually took time off, and I'm very good friends with a guy called Richie Woodall, and Richie Woodall was at the time the WBC super middleweight champion of the world.
Oh, wow.
So I called him up. Yeah. And I said, "Hey, Rich, can I come train with you? Can you come and put me through my paces and get me up to speed. So it's kind of funny. He trained at a power station in Telford. So it was like as rough and tumble as you can get, and I loved it. So I'd go there and we'd train every day. And when I went in for the audition, I auditioned for the director, and he said, "Can you box?" And I just said to him, "I'll fight anyone for this role." I said, I'll fight him. I said, "Put him in the ring. I might get my head kicked in, but I'll fight, and I can box." So he came up and he saw me fight, and he was like, "Yeah, you got it." And then it was meeting with Michael Caine and working with him, which was just unbelievable. I mean, not only is he an incredible human being, but obviously he's an amazing actor. But, I really tried to learn as much as I could from him in the time that we had together. And he was incredibly gracious and just super hardworking, just super hardworking.
Yeah, training at a power station. That sounds like something that if you told that to Stallone, he would have put in like a Rocky movie.
Yeah. He probably, he tends to do his research on the actors that he brings in. So I'm sure he knew about it, when it came to us doing Rambo. So I'm sure he knew. I mean, he certainly knew about my singing. He mentioned that when I very first met him. So that was kind of funny.
Oh, wow. We'll definitely talk about that. So that's cool. So you did that. You worked with one of your heroes. And then, so the next big movie that you had was Black Hawk Down. So at this point, are you still in England, or are you coming over here? Because it looks like after that, you were doing like 2 or 3 films a year.
Yeah, well, what happened with that was I at the same time I was auditioning for Star Wars, because obviously I got doing a movie with a multiple Oscar winner gets a lot of attention, and I just didn't know, and I always felt that if I was going to come to America, I didn't want to just come without having something behind me, or, I wanted to come and make something of myself here, So what happened was word started getting out, I believe, about me in China and working with Michael, and he was nominated for Cider House Rules that year. And so I got a few calls from agents and managers. And so they flew over to meet me, actually. And I met with one in particular, Vanessa Alexander, who was at Handprint, which is Benny Medina's company, and Jeff Pollock. And she said, I got on super well with her. And she goes, "Listen, you should really come to America now, And I said, okay. And she called me from the plane and she said, "Look, I really think you should come." I said, "Okay, I'll see you on Friday." And she's like, "Oh, British actors always say that. They always say they're coming." And I said, "I'll see you on Friday." And I booked my ticket and I came over, and, it was amazing, coming to Los Angeles, and it was a dream. It was a dream that I always wanted, going onto the Paramount lot, the Warner Brothers lot, things that I'd looked at when I was a little boy and said, that is, that's the pinnacle of being an actor. And came over and I got the audition. I got it. And so it was kind of strange. I remember that my one of the other managers at the company came into me at the time and he goes, "You're not going home. I'm just telling you right now, you're not going home." And and it was a really great time to come over to Hollywood. There was a lot of, like, now we don't have like those kind of movies. The movies now are either massive movies like the Avengers, or and then there's the small ones, the indie ones. Yeah. But then a $25 million movie was considered to be a middle of the range film, and there was a lot of them getting made, and it's not like that anymore, which is a real shame. That's why you don't really get those breakout performances, I believe, now. From other actors.
If you notice it in the movie theater, if you go to the movies, there's not as many movies in the theaters as there used to be because there's so many different options. But no, you're right.
No, they're spending that kind of money on TV shows. So, and it's a shame because you don't. They're those kind of like interesting movies, some B movies, like sub B movies kind of thing are in that bracket, and that's gone now because the big stars are all taken up on these massive franchises. So it's unfortunate. But when I came, there was a lot of that. So I got Black Hawk Down, and I remember, I auditioned for it here, and then I went home, and they were like, "Oh, they like you for it," and I went back home. Obviously, I met with Ridley and Jerry Bruckheimer, which two of my other idols.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're getting the phone call when they go. It's so funny. I don't know how actors can be cool about it because people go, I got the phone call, and it's, "Hey, listen, Ridley Scott and Jerry Bruckheimer want to meet you," and it's just one of those moments where you're like, "This is it." It's Ridley Scott and Jerry Bruckheimer. Like, what? And you try and be cool when you go in there, but all the time, like for me anyway, I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's Ridley Scott and Jerry," And so I came back home and I got the phone call. It was really funny. I got the phone call at like midnight over in the UK that I've got the role, and I got a bottle of champagne, and I actually went round to my mom's, and I rang the doorbell, and she came down. I said, "Hey, listen, I got the role," and it was really awesome, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life working on that movie.
Where was that movie filmed?
That was filmed in Morocco, so we were there like 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah, no, in my earlier career, I did a lot of stuff all over the world, which was really nice. Because you get to travel and you get to stay in the nicest hotels and be treated very well and have these amazing experiences. And so, Black Hawk Down was particularly an amazing experience and exposed me and I have a long-term relationship with the veterans in this country and in particular the Army.
Yeah.
So, it was really amazing being a part of that and learning so much on it. And it was terrific.
That's great. Yeah, and talking about like a superstar cast, like people that are already big at the time, but then some other people in like smaller-ish roles that went on to do a lot of stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's really 5 months here with all those people. Yeah, no,
I mean, and we all have, when we see each other, it's a real camaraderie,
Oh,
and
cool.
I was in a weird kind of situation. So I was like 27, I think, around that when I made that film, and I was older than a lot of the Rangers, right? So there was a lot of younger guys in there. I mean, not by much. I mean, maybe a couple of years, but some of them were very young. And I was not quite as old as like Bill Fichtner and Kim Coates and those guys. So I was kind of, and also my role in that film meant that I spent a lot of time with Eric Bana.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't in with the main group for the Rangers, but I was with Eric because the other two guys that came into us that played the Delta guys were actually stunt guys. So I spent a lot of time with both groups while being in the middle of both of them age-wise, and it was great. I had a lovely time, and the cast was amazing. We were all very good friends.
That's awesome.
On that film, and it was really great.
So you mentioned a little bit before you auditioned for Star Wars. Was that for, I guess that was the second movie, or was that the first of the prequels?
Well, I think it was. I don't know is the answer to that. I'm not sure if it was for the first one. I think it was probably for the second one, but they were looking at us for the first, and it was when I was shooting Shiner. So I'd get a phone call, and they're like, "Hey Matt, they want you to put yourself on tape again," and I missed the last part of it because I was actually shooting a scene in Shiner where I have an argument with Michael Caine in the middle of the night, and we were shooting in the middle of the night, so I couldn't get because back then it was like send your tape over.
Yeah.
It wasn't like now where you just put it on your transfer and send the tape, and they get it minutes later. That was then you got to record it, you got to put it in an envelope, you got to FedEx it across, so I did. It was like 5 or 6 or even 7 auditions that they would call up and say, "Do it again and do it like this, and do it again and do it like that." And I was on the short list for it. So it was unfortunate that I couldn't make the last tape that I was meant to send over, I couldn't do.
Do you remember what kind of role it was?
I don't. They were it's one of those. And sometimes in this industry, you'll have people go, listen, it's really top secret. And you're like, come on, nobody cares. But when it's, you know what I mean? It's true. It's like nobody cares. I mean, I've had instances where I've had to go into Fox and I've had to sit there and read the script right there for 2 hours. And it's like, there's some movies that you go, okay, I get it. Like any of the Marvel movies, I get it. But with this case, it was like, we can't tell you, and I'm like, okay, it's like Star Wars.
Yeah.
I get it. It's Star Wars. So, it was the biggest thing at the time. So I don't know exactly what the role was. And it's been a long time. And also, I'm still digesting being on set with Michael Caine and Martin Landau and Andy Serkis, so it's kind of like, well, I guess it's the naivete of youth. You're like, well, I'm doing this movie. I just got to, there are other things that are going to come. I mean, obviously Star Wars was so important to me, but I didn't know where it was going to go or what it was for at that point.
Yeah. I can understand why they don't let scripts out, because the one guy in the new Star Wars movie, he left it in his hotel under his bed, and there was like a big thing about that. Somebody sold on eBay for like a bunch of money. But even like smaller movies, I just interviewed a guy that was in one of the Friday the 13th movies, and he didn't know until he showed up on set that it was a Friday the 13th movie. They called it like Ashes to Ashes, and Jason's name was I forget what it was. It was like Ethan. So like they show up on set and then it's like, this is a Jason movie, because they didn't want people to know. So yeah, I guess no matter what, they like to keep things hush hush. But so you mentioned before, we were talking about like the B movies that they would make. And right after you do, well, a couple of years after Black Hawk Down, you're in Anaconda's The Hunt for the Blood Orchid.
Yeah. So that was a funny thing. I was up for like 4 different movies at that time.
Really?
And I didn't know which one I was going to do. And I was literally saying, hey guys, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Which, am I going to go to Prague? Am I going to go to, and they called me up and they said, hey, listen, do you want to do Anacondas? And I was like, and then they said, it's in Fiji and they're paying you a load of money. And cause I actually hadn't seen the first one and I love John Voight. Right. So,
yeah.
So, I was playing the villain. I'm like the villain after John Voight. And the other thing is around that period of time, because, a lot of the time when you do a sequel, it's not always good. Right.
Oh, I know.
So
I know that's what we do. We cover sequels. So no, I know.
Yeah, no. So it's kind of hard, but then at the time, what a lot of people don't realize is because the first one had such an incredible cast, right? You look back at the cast on that, it's insane.
Oh, I know.
For that kind of a movie. And I love Dwight, who was the director. He was amazing. And the vibe around town was, again, it was like, this is the new crop, following Owen and J-Lo and Ice Cube and all those guys. So whoever was getting this movie, you get a lot of momentum. And it was also in Fiji. And I'm like, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
And it was also a villain. It's also a villain, and villains are always the best role. So I'm like, yeah, that'll be cool. Great. I'll go over and do it.
Was that your first time playing a villain?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So it was a delicious role to go and do, and I love the people that were doing it. And again, we're all still very good friends now. And Fiji for 3 months, getting paid a lot of money. It's like, come on, I'll go do that. And I'm like, we were outside in Fiji. It was unbelievable. And I had a really, really great time. Yeah.
That's so cool. No, I interviewed somebody that was in Crystal Allen. She starred in the 3rd and 4th one, and I interviewed the director of the 3rd one. And they filmed that one. It was in Romania, so that's why I was wondering if they shot it. So Fiji, that's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, and the producer was the original producer, Werner Hara from Hara Casinos, and Jake Rose was the other producer. Like really, really big producers, and also Dwight Little, who was a great director.
That's
You know,
awesome.
so I was and I loved working with him, and I loved working. I mean, listen, we're all, when you're acting, and you know, who was it said, you know, when you work and you do something you love, you never work a day in your life again.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
you know, doing a movie, and that goes for any movie that I've done. You know, I consider myself to be very fortunate to have been able to make a career out of acting, certainly in films. And you know, you learn something on every single movie that you make. I mean, of course, you know, we'd all love to be, you know, doing the Rambos and also, you know, the big Oscar-winning films. But you know, there are reasons for taking the decisions that you make, and I've turned a lot of movies down for other reasons, you know. So I just consider, you know, every day on set to be a blessing.
That's awesome,
You
man.
know,
You have a great outlook on it.
whatever. Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate. There are thousands and millions of people that would love to do what I do, you know.
No, I know. I interviewed a guy that was he was I don't know if he was maybe on the board of SAG, but when he told me the number of people that actually live off of acting, it was like the smallest number, and I could not believe it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
it's
was
like
like
1%. I think
yeah.
it's really, really small. 1 or 2% of the people that work there in SAG, and you know, I'm coming up to being a SAG member for 19 years now. So yeah. So I've been, again, like I say, I've been very lucky, and I love my job, and I get to meet great people like you, and talk
Well,
to
thank you, man.
people that are fans. So yeah.
Oh, totally. So one movie I didn't know before we get into Rambo, it's this like in between Rambo and Anaconda. And there's a few TV shows you're on, but I never knew this. They made a movie of this, but Dead or Alive. Were you able to fight in that movie?
Yeah, it was. So basically, a little bit of trivia. So I was meant to. It's a long story on this, and I won't get into the weeds. But I was meant to work with Paul Anderson on Alien versus Predator.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it didn't work out. So Paul came back when they did this thing, Dead or Alive, you know, and you know, because Paul is kind of the king of the video game movies. And we've got Corey Yoon, who was, you know, I believe he was the fight coordinator on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or no, sorry, he was the fight coordinator on X-Men and a bunch of other stuff. And they got all the wire people and the stunt people from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And they came, they said, listen, we're going to do this film, which is based on the best-selling video game. We're going to shoot it in China. We've got Corey Yoon, who's one of the world's great stunt coordinators, like fight coordinators. And we've got the guys that did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. For the wire work, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And, you know, we've got all the girls in to play the different roles, and a couple of very interesting guys coming in and playing the other roles. And you can go out there and, you know, you can fight. So you get to fight on it. And so I was like, great, you know, it's China, 3 months, you know, doing a fight movie, you know, and it was, you know, we all thought it was set up to be this really big film. It didn't quite work out that way, you know. It's funny because Michael Caine once said, you know, you never go out to make a bad film.
Yeah.
Or you never go out to make a movie that doesn't work. And what happened with DOA was, you know, it was one of those that didn't quite do what it should have done, but it's become a little bit of a cult classic. You know, like my buddy who says, you know, DOA is a guilty pleasure for me. So I go and watch it, and to watch these fight sequences with, you know, Holly Valance and Jamie Presley and Sarah Carter, and, you know, so, you know, and Caine Kasugi is Sho Kasugi's son. So, you know, you're talking martial art movie royalty right there.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other people. So, you know, we had again, a great time. Got to see, you know, before China was really opening itself up that much to film, we got to go around and shoot there, which was, it was both challenging and very interesting.
And I think you said it best, you know, like the video game movies are so hard to do because it's just that it's a fighting video game. There's no story. So it's hard to do that. But I'm looking at the trailer and I paused at a part and it's you standing next to Kevin Nash, which is pretty badass.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. Like, but so this Kevin Nash was there, and oh my goodness, Derek Boy, I think his surname is. So Derek was one of the world's strongest men.
Oh,
so,
wow.
For example, so we go out and train, and I'd see these guys, and Kevin would have, I always called it his comedy dumbbell, because he had a dumbbell, what most people would use as a barbell, or like, the weight size. So we'd have these massive weights, and I'd be like, Kev, this is just ridiculous. And with Derek, I remember seeing him one day, and I was like, Derek, what you doing? And he goes, I'm going to go and train legs. I said, how are you going to train legs? And we were in the middle of China. There was, nothing there then. He goes, oh, I'm going to do squats. And I went, well, what are you going to squat? And he said, the grip truck. I was like, what? And he did. He went out and he picked the truck up. It's no joke. And that's what he would do to train. And Kevin's like this, Kevin's massive.
I know.
And he's also hugely strong. Like, people don't realize, like, those guys are so strong. And by the way, the sweetest guy you will ever meet. And I was not a follower of the WWE or WWF or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
And I didn't realize he was this like gigantic star. And he was such a sweetheart and very patient when I would ask him a lot about training and about, because I always like to take the opportunity to educate myself on the other people on the set, in the sense that I'll go and ask them about their lives.
Oh, that's great.
Not in an intrusive way, but I want to know, if I don't know about his career, I'd like to know about it. And I mean, he, those guys go through the wars, man. They get beaten up.
Oh yeah.
So
they work like night in, night out.
And he gets battered, he get, chairs banged over him, and, they're real tough guys. They're really tough. And he's one of the great guys.
And it's great that you take a movie like that. Like you said, it didn't get the reception or come out the way, but you were able to, have a great experience, meet a bunch of people, you're able to work with Eric Roberts, Jamie Presley. And so that's pretty cool. So then right after that, you're in a sequel, Resident Evil.
Yeah. So again,
Paul Anderson.
Yeah, Paul called me and he was like, "Hey Matt, listen, I'd really like you to come and do Resident Evil." And he said Russell Mulcahy's directing it, and I'm like, "The dude that did Highlander? Are you kidding?" I mean, because I absolutely loved Highlander. And it was great. And so what I did was I flew down to Mexico City, because we shot it in Mexico City, and we did pickups for DOA. So I was doing pickups for DOA down there in a studio and going and doing Resident Evil. And so that was great, because I love Paul and Mila, and, working with Ian as well. I mean, Ian's a really terrific actor, and being a part of that was really, really great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And again, playing a kind of a bad guy, but I enjoyed it.
Now, working on set, so this is how many years removed from when you were singing and you did the song with Destiny's Child and you had her album come out. So you're working with Ashanti. Do people ever ask you, do people come up to you on set and learn about you? Is that something that you mentioned? Because that's kind of like a fun fact.
Well, it's funny because I think that, it depends. Like, it depends how long you're on a movie. And,
that's
and a
true.
lot of times, and a lot of times, like, you don't overstep the boundaries, right? Like, you want to be respectful of the other people. For example, just going back to China, one day I was doing a scene in the back of a limo and with Michael, and we had some downtime, and I turned around to him and I said, Michael, do you have any tips for me as a young actor? And he looked at me and he went, "You're doing fine, Zach." Like that. And that was it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, all right. I kind of asked him because it's Michael Caine. And then I saw years later on a show in the UK, he was asked about this. He said, "I don't give people tips." He said, "Because when I was younger and I asked an actor for a tip on my acting, he told me, 'Yeah, quit.'" And I was like, oh, I know, because I did ask him, and he didn't give me any tips. He didn't, because he's generous. He goes, you're going to be doing great. So, it's one of those things where someone might feel comfortable later, bringing something like that up. Or, like I said, Stallone did, because, he's so multifaceted. I think he write Rhinestone or something like that. He's done such a lot of things that, he asks about it because he gets very invested in whatever he's doing. And that, I think that includes the people that he works with, So I've had a couple of people come up and say, hey, you did this or you did that, or, what about this? What about that? I get it a lot. I actually get a lot of people asking me about the work I've done with the military and the training I've done with the military.
Oh, that's cool.
Oddly enough. Yeah, it's really cool. People do ask, but again, you don't know how people, because it's funny in the industry, right? Some people look at like An Officer and a Gentleman, for example. You watch that movie and you think that those two had a great chemistry and they hated each other.
Yeah.
So what you don't want to do is go, you guys were great in that film. And, she was, and they're like, oh, I hate that, or I hate that director. So there is that kind of like, unless you get to know them, like in my latest movie, I was stuck in a car with guys for hours. So you end up talking to each other and you start talking about different things, so it all depends.
Yeah. No, that's good. So let's talk Rambo. And I know you touched on it a couple of times. So you going for the audition for that, and Stallone knew a lot about you. He knew about your singing.
Well, what happened with that was I got a call from my manager, and they said, hey, listen, they're doing Rambo, and Sheila Jaffe, who's the casting director, who's one of the best casting directors in the world. She wanted to see me, and I actually went in for Lewis's character, for Graham's character in that. And I always kind of, for the most part, understate my role. I always play down. I play a lot of times against the way that it's written. And so I did the scene, and I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, listen, Stallone's going to call you. They like you for Schoolboy. And Schoolboy at the time, I believe, was a Navy SEAL. He was a SEAL team sniper. And I was like, Stallone's going to call me? Like, what? And I turned around like, nobody pick up the phone. Nobody pick up the phone. Because obviously, I grew up, looking up to Stallone, from the writing aspect, from everything that he achieved in his career. I mean, when I grew up in the 80s, he was the biggest star in the world. So anyway, he calls me and he basically says, do you want to come and hang out tomorrow? And I'm like, yep. So I go around and I hang out with him. And he's, we start talking about different things. Now, obviously he knew that I'd had a lot of military training. And, I say military training, I mean actors' version of military training, not the difficult stuff. But, so we spoke about things, we were talking about weapons, different kind of weapons. He's incredibly well read. And and he said, I think that I want you to play Schoolboy. And in the original script, Schoolboy basically took over the franchise. So it was Stallone and it was Rambo and Schoolboy together, like almost as the Troutman and Rambo characters.
Oh, wow.
So I was like super excited. I'm like, this is amazing. Stallone's directing it. I had some suggestions. I suggested about him being an SBS guy, and I told him about who the SBS were. He knew who the SAS were, and I just said, we had a long conversation about character, and he's, like I said, he's massively invested in these characters, and so next thing I know, we're going off to Thailand to make the film. And it is an amazing thing about Stallone. So we get there and he walks over and he sees all the gear we've got on. And, they've spent a long time putting all this gear together and props and all this. And he goes, take that off, take that off, take that off, take that off. You'll die in the jungle. Like, it'll kill you. So what's amazing is that as a writer and as a director, he also understands what an actor goes through. and he knows how to get the best out of the actors. And it's a really incredible thing to see. You know what I mean? To see the synergy of all those different things come together, to gel a cast, and also he's the hardest working guy around.
Oh, I know.
Like there's nobody. It's unbelievable. Like he's, on set, he's directing. Then he's acting in the scene. In between, he's like, got this like stick with a rope on, with a weight on the end that he's doing to work his forearms, and he's doing different exercises in between. And then lunchtime he goes and looks at the rushes. I mean, it's just full on. So there's a reason why he was the biggest star in the world for, and still is. He's still one of the biggest stars in the world. And the dude just doesn't stop working. He's super hard working. So I learned a lot on that movie with him, a lot.
Yeah, your role was really cool in the movie. That guy the Lewis character, that guy was like super evil, the mercenary. But that movie, I'm sure there's movies before that were that over the top with the kills and just how graphic it was. But I remember seeing that movie in the movie theater. I took a date, and that relationship, that was like the only date we had. But that movie was so over the top with some of those scenes. I watched it not too long ago, and it's just like, oh man, that movie is so cool. And what's awesome? So there's a video somebody made on YouTube, and somebody did like a compilation of your character and Tim Kang's characters kills, like each thing they kill all together.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Well, of course, mine are cooler than Tim's.
Yeah.
Obviously. No, I mean, it's what I think that, Sly wanted to bring attention to the Burmese and what they were doing over there and the way they were brutalizing the Karen people. I mean, even though, people look and they say, oh, Rambo, and they might dismiss it. I think because after First Blood, which I think is just an unbelievable film, and then you went Rambo 2 and Rambo 3, which I actually love both of those films.
Oh yeah.
I love them. I mean, these are the ones that, those are the movies that when as a kid you're like, I need to get down the gym and work out. And also I believe that it made people absolutely terrified of the Green Berets, the Special Forces. I love those movies. But if you think about it, he was always in that writing, he's always trying to shine a light on certain issues, but you don't hear him talk about it. So like the Burmese have brutalized the Karen people for years and years and years, and they have a very, very tense relationship with the Thais. And when we were over there, like, we were under constant threat of getting killed.
Wow.
And certainly he was, and he was the biggest target. I don't think they really cared about if they got any of us, but they certainly. He was brave enough to go all the way over. I know actors that won't even leave America. Right? And Sly's like, no, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to go right on the border with Burma. And they used to get like phone calls. I'm going to kill you. And then they'd hang up. So he really wanted to make a statement. And I think, a lot of people go, oh, well, it's graphically violent. But the truth of the matter is those things are graphically violent. I mean, I know the end of the movie is probably one of the most violent movies of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. But I think it's also a reaction. It was also kind of like a throwback to the early 80s, and people were fed up again in this kind of like sanitized version of war. And he was just like, okay, I'm going to show it. And I think to a degree that we thought that it was probably going to be not passed, by the censors, but they did. It stayed in. I mean, look, Rambo is never, if you watch that film, he's tortured all the way through that film.
Oh, I know.
He's a really tortured soul. So it's not like, hey, yeah, I'm going to go off and kill a bunch of people. I'm having a great time in my life. It's like, you see the ramifications of it. And at the end of it, none of us are, we're all beaten down.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of stuff in there unpack. But yeah, I mean, on the other hand, it's a great movie. I remember going with my buddies when I blow the guys' heads off, and they're like, "Whoa, yes, that's awesome!" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude." And again, it just shows I think you're only as good as the material that you get and the direction, that you get, and the material is good. It's very good, and my character was very cool, and he wrote it like that, and he shot it like that. So.
That's awesome. So one thing I really want to spend a lot of time on with you, because thanks so much for taking the time, and I know this means like a lot to you, is the movie that it's called I Am That Man.
Yeah.
So I watched the trailer. It looks really cool. Is that out for people to see?
Not yet. It's about to come out. So okay. So the little story behind that is basically, after I did Black Hawk Down, I've been involved a lot with veterans and veterans causes, and basically seeing what our heroes go through when they come home. And, they get very frustrated with the way that veterans and the military are portrayed in movies. And I was very lucky that Black Hawk Down is, people that aren't military don't understand this, but Black Hawk Down is kind of seen as the movie for them. It holds a special place in all of these guys' hearts, guys and girls' hearts.
Oh wow!
So for a long time, that they get the people that I've spoken to. I don't want to talk about people as a monolithic block, but I think that the guys that I spoke to and the girls that I spoke to, mainly dudes, are like, people don't portray us correctly. They portray us as crazy, wackadoodles that, are unhinged, or they drink all the time and this, and they don't really touch on what we go through when we come home properly, and the issues that we go through when we come home. And so what I did was I wrote a screenplay. I'd already written one screenplay that I sold. I just did it, for, I don't know, I'll see if I can do it. And I wrote the screenplay. I mean, after reading thousands of screenplays, you get a feel for it. And I wrote one and I sold it, my first one. So I'm like, okay. So I wrote the second one, and again, it just got a lot of acclaim. And that was I Am That Man. And so what I did was I wanted to show the juxtaposition of, when a guy is an absolute rock star, when he walks onto a base in Kandahar or wherever it is, and when he comes home, he gets treated like a yahoo. People look down, not necessarily because of the person that they are, just the attitude that people have to other people in life. If you work at Home Depot or wherever, there's a lot of people that have that elitist attitude where that they'll talk down to you. And look, I come from a very working class background, so I'm very well aware of that. And my thing is I treat every single person the same. My grandmother cleaned toilets for a living, and she was one of the greatest human beings to ever walk this earth, right? So what I wanted to show is, these guys come back and they're massively skilled, but what do you do when your skill is shooting people at, 1,500 yards? Yeah. Or being an expert in assaulting, assaulting buildings, or, I've got a friend right now that's coming back who's just deployed and, is an Air Force PJ, and they're massively skilled, right? But what do you do when you come home? And, what do you do? Oh, well, I can halo into any country you want and I can exfil. So there's a very unique job market for those kind of guys. So a lot of guys come back, and even not the special forces guys, the special operations community, regular folk come back, and they lose their brotherhood, because they've got guys next to them they know would die for them. Yeah. They lose a lot of the time their sense of who they are, because, being in the Navy or in the Army or in the Marine Corps or the Air Force, there's no identity for that. And they come and they're like, now I work at Home Depot and people talk to me like crap, right? Talk down to me and just dealing with, that thing, which is, as a man, it's the greatest thing that you can do is provide for your family, right? Like, be a family man and provide for your family eventually. So, this guy comes back and he's doing a job because he wants to build a relationship with his son. I think certainly in the special operations community, there's almost like an 80% divorce rate. So he's trying to keep his family together. He's trying to work on that. And so I wrote this script, which the whole underlying story of him and his wife and his son, and it's set up against this backdrop of his best friend, mentor, an older Jewish guy, is killed by some neo-Nazis.
Oh, wow.
And he gets frustrated because the police are just completely snowed under. They're trying to do their best to track down who were the killers, and they don't. And he's like, I have the skill set to go after these guys, so I'm going to go after them. And that's what he does. So it's kind of like a vigilante movie in one way.
I like that.
Yeah. So it's a mix of the two, but for guys that were former military, there's a lot in. So I sent the script away to a friend of mine, Craig Sawyer, who's a former SEAL Team 6 sniper, and he went through it. He critiqued it. Another guy who's a Purple Heart recipient called Matt James, I sent the script to him. He went through it. I sent it to a veterans advocate by the name of Boone Cutler, who wrote a book called Voodoo in Sada City. He was part of an intelligence group that were going after al-Sada in Sada City. So I went through the whole, I said to these guys, look, this is a movie for you. And then I went about casting as many veterans and law enforcement or former law enforcement people as possible. And that was I Am That Man. And it was actually the first movie, the guys at AFES, which is, the Army and Air Force bases, thought it was so important that it's the first movie that they have ever taken into all the AFES around the world to go directly to theaters without getting the general release in the USA or anywhere else in the world. It's the first movie they've ever done that. So I'm very, very proud of it, that it's doing what it's meant to have done. And obviously, nobody goes out there to make a bad movie. Everyone goes out there to make a good movie. And I'm biased. I think that it's a good film. And it's going to be out pretty soon for people to go watch. So, thank you for mentioning that, because I think, my aim with that movie is if it saves one life or one marriage or, gets people that are going through difficulties to talk, and also encourages people out there to say, you know what, I can go and do this. I want to get into the movie industry and I can go and do this. Certainly for veterans, that I would have done my job.
Yeah, I think you did it the right way. There's so many times that you hear just from, things you read about some movies or TV shows that they'll use like the wrong terminology, like say if it's like a doctor spouting off something to like a patient and it's not something, it's like, how did it even make it in there? But that's so cool that you had the wherewithal to like send it to people that you knew that could look at it and, you respected their opinion. And that maybe that's why you got your first script sold. So you do a lot of things and you do it the first time, first audition, you have an album, your first script gets bought. Is there anything else you're going to be trying in the next few years? Do you play the lottery?
I think I should actually. No, like I said, it's one of those things where, if I see a barrier to what I want to do, I figure out how I'm going to get around it.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to, I'm not the kind of person that says I can do everything, right? I'm not. But what I do is I look at something and say, okay, for example, the movie industry has contracted as far as making those middle level movies, right? And so if I get frustrated with the quality of material that is coming to me, and if it's either massive film or very small movie, then I'm not doing the kind of work that I really want to do. So I'll go get it made. I'll go and approach people. I'll buy books. I'll buy the rights to certain books or get screenplays in that I really believe in, and then I'll go and get it made. So it's more of a kind of, I don't believe in sitting on my backside and waiting for it to come to me.
Definitely.
I'll go out there and I'll make it happen, and just keep going out there. And also, again, like with I Am That Man, I got so frustrated with the quality of the films that came out and the way that they were portraying veterans. And I'd see these guys who were struggling every day, and they deserve better. So I'm like, okay, I'll go do it. And that's why, by the way, because in the movie I wrote it, I directed it, and I starred in it. And the only reason why that happened was because I know that I'm going to turn up on set every day on time, knowing my lines.
Yeah.
And when you do a lower budget film, there's no skin, there's no fat that on the production. You've got to put every single thing into the production. And I didn't have the luxury of having an actor that didn't feel like turning up or didn't feel like learning his lines or had a problem with this or wanted to stay in his trailer and that. And I'm like, I'm going to come out and do it. And I'm not going to, say I won't do it again, but I'd rather not do it again. I'd rather not do it. I'd like to direct again. I really enjoyed that. And the actors, I think, do a really terrific job. And again, I gave the actors, the opportunity to improvise.
Oh, great.
Because I know what actors want. Yeah. So, I've got a couple of terrific performances. Tim Abel in it is staggering. His performance is absolutely staggering in the film. So, it's a lot of work, but I think that, if people are frustrated with what they're seeing or they want to see different kinds of movies, go out and write. Know that your first draft is going to be absolutely terrible. And that's what Ken Nolan said to me. Ken Nolan goes, Matt, if you're going to write, he's the guy who wrote Black Hawk Down. He goes, if you're going to write, know that your first draft is going to be absolutely terrible. I'm like, okay. He told me that, and he said also get over 50 pages. And those are the two words of advice he gave to me. But so I think it's more, like I said, I love what I do. I love, obviously you're doing a podcast about sequels, so you love film. Yeah. And I love film. I love watching it, and I love being in it, being in them. Being in the industry. And I'm a workaholic, man. And if the stuff isn't coming to me that I want to do, I'll go out and make it happen. I think that's awesome. The bottom line. And
that's how you got from, that's how you got from, where you grew up in industrial town, West Bromwich. And, you didn't, like you said, you didn't sit on your backside, and look where you're at now. You're able to do so much.
Yeah. And look, I think sometimes I didn't really appreciate at the time the amount, because in Hollywood, it's 99% about momentum, right? So if you have momentum and people want you, that's why you see the same actors in a lot of movies. They move from one to the next, the next, the next. There's a lot of that. And I had a lot of that certainly earlier in my career. And that makes things a lot easier. But you don't necessarily get all the films that you want. There's a bunch of stuff that I was right down to the last two on that would make your hair curl if you knew. Yeah. And some of them go your way, some of them don't. I spoke to someone on Twitter said to me, hey, listen, my boyfriend went up for the same role as you for Coronation Street. I was like, oh man. And he was gracious. He said, he goes, look, the better guy got the role. You're better than him. And I'm like, well, that's subjective, but I'll take it. But, it might have been on that day, there's a little bit of luck. I had momentum coming off the other show, and same thing with Rambo. Stallone was looking for a particular kind of person, and I fit the bill, and I went in, and on that day I nailed it. There's a lot of that. Yeah. But there is an element of you've got to make your own luck as well,
Definitely.
You gotta make your own look by working hard. I mean, I'm up every day. I work out every single day. I write every day. But I love this industry. I love it.
That's awesome, man. Well, Matt, this has been awesome. And I'm going to keep tabs on when I Am That Man is going to come out. But if you want to just shoot me an email, if you can remember, and then I'll make sure to put the link in and I'll try to put the episode out right around that time so more people check it out. Is it going to be on like Amazon Prime or Netflix? What kind of?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, we've been, like I said, I held on because I wanted, again, it was never about money for me. So we wanted to make the troops know that we were coming to them first. So, like I said, it was the first one. So we've delayed doing our deals, our distribution deals, until now. So we're doing the deals right now on that. And
awesome.
So it's going to be it's going to be coming out real soon. And I think that, it's one of those movies where it'll get word of mouth. There's terrific performances in it. And I'm very, very proud of it. I'm very proud of the guys that came in. There was no one on that film that didn't want to be there. And that's a really great thing. So I'm looking at doing my next one now. So
sweet, man. Yeah, I'll keep tabs on you. I'm sure you'll post it on like Twitter or Instagram. But this has been great, Matt. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Man, wasn't Matthew awesome? So 2 things I loved about him most was 1, gets a job, Black Hawk Down. First thing he does, champagne, goes to his mom. Gotta show love to the mom. A big moment like that shows a lot about that guy. And 2, I Am That Man. It has not out yet. I'm going to put all the links in the bio to his social media, his website, and I Am That Man's website. Hopefully it comes out soon. But the fact when I said, oh, are you talking to Amazon, Hulu? And he's like, money really doesn't matter. He just wanted to make a movie that really is how veterans feel. And man, what a great guy. All that training he did, Black Hawk Down back in like early 2000s, it really stuck with him. He really cares about the military, and I respect him. And Matthew, you're awesome. If you're listening to this, I hope so. But now it's time to talk about your homework. You have to go watch Rambo. It is on Amazon Prime for free. Obviously, you want to do it quick because our review's next week. It's good. We got into outfits. Pretty rad. Jamie actually dressed up for the first time. He did some bad outfits in the past, but this one's really good. So it's on Amazon Prime. It's going to be off September 30th, so jump on it. And don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget, check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.